January 26th, 2023, 9:15 a.m. Mumbai Stock Exchange. In 90 seconds, $20 billion will vanish. Not stolen, not hidden, just gone. Erased from existence like it never existed at all. By the time the closing bell rings, India's third richest man will have lost more money than most countries make in a year. Millions of ordinary Indians will watch their life savings crumble in real time. And the global financial world will be asking one question. How did this happen? The answer starts 48 hours earlier, 8,000 miles away, in New York City. A 34-year-old financial analyst named Nathan Anderson sits in a modest office in Manhattan. He clicks a button. A PDF uploads to his company's website. 106 pages, 7 words in the title that will detonate like a bomb across 2 continents. The largest con in corporate history. The target, Gautam Adani, infrastructure titan, coal baron, the man whose airports you fly through, whose power charges your phone, whose ports ship half of India's cargo, the man who, just 3 months earlier, had surpassed Bill Gates to become the world's 4th richest person. $150 billion would vanish in the weeks to come, retirement funds, college savings, pensions for 60 million workers. And the question that would shake India's government, its markets, its faith in its own success story: how did a short seller nobody had heard of destroy the nation's most powerful businessmen? This is that story. This is the Hindenburg effect. Let's talk about the people who lit the fuse. Hindenburg Research. If you haven't heard of them, that's by design. They're not a hedge fund. They're not an investment bank. They're a forensic financial investigation firm. About 12 people, an unremarkable office in Lower Manhattan, and a business model that makes them either heroes or vultures, depending on who you ask. Here's how it works. They find fraud. They publish the evidence. They short the stock. And when the company collapses, they profit. The name itself is deliberate. The Hindenburg, the German airship that exploded in 1937, killing 36 people, Nathan Anderson, the founder, chose it as a symbol of massive, preventable disaster, of something that looked impressive right up until the moment it burst into flames. Anderson started Hindenburg in 2017, former investment analyst, especially finding what everyone else missed or what everyone else chose not to see. Their track record speaks for itself. Nikola Motors, 2020. Hindenburg published a report exposing the electric truck company's fake demonstration video, the one where they claimed their truck drove under its own power. Turns out they'd just rolled it down a hill. The founder was indicted for fraud, convicted, sentenced to 4 years in prison. Clover Health, 2021. Hindenburg uncovered a Department of Justice investigation the company hadn't disclosed to investors. Stock crashed 25% in a day. They'd done this before. But Adani was different. For 2 years, Anderson's team had been tracking something bigger than anything they'd ever hunted. They traveled to 4 countries, reviewed thousands of documents, traced shell companies through tax havens in Mauritius, Cyprus, the Caribbean. They followed money trails that disappeared into offshore accounts and reemerged in Mumbai high-rises. They'd found something massive. And now they were about to bet millions of dollars it was real. Think about what that means. Shorting Adani meant betting against a man worth $120 billion, a man whose closest business associate was Narendra Modi, India's prime minister, a man who controlled the infrastructure of the world's most populous democracy. 3 months before Hindenburg's report, Gautam Adani had become the world's 3rd richest person, richer than Warren Buffett, richer than Larry Page, behind only Elon Musk and Bernard Arnault. And Hindenburg was about to call him a fraud. But they had the receipts, documents, names, money trails. And on January 24th, 2023, they were ready to show the world what they'd found, what nobody knew, whether the entire empire would survive it. To understand what Hindenburg was attacking, you need to understand what Gautam Adani built, born 1962. Ahmedabad, India, not wealthy, not connected, just ambitious. College dropout. 1980s, he's sorting diamonds in Mumbai, working for his brother's plastics business. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that suggests he'd become one of the richest men on earth. His first company, Adani Exports, started in 1988. He imported polyvinyl chloride, commodity trading, thin margins, brutal competition. But Adani had something others didn't: ruthless focus and impeccable timing. The 1990s. India opens its economy. Liberalization, privatization. Suddenly, opportunities everywhere. Adani pivots to coal, then power generation. And here's where the genius, or the con, depending on your perspective, begins. In 1998, Adani wins a contract to manage Mundra Port in Gujarat state. This becomes the foundation of everything. The strategy is simple and devastatingly effective: vertical integration. If you need to import coal, own the port. If you own the port, own the power plants that burn the coal. If you own the power plants, own the transmission lines. control every link in the chain. By the 2000s, Adani Group is a juggernaut, growing faster than India's economy itself. And then, 2014. Narendra Modi becomes Prime Minister. Modi had been Chief Minister of Gujarat from 2001 to 2014, the same state where Adani built his empire. After 2014, Adani companies won multiple government contracts, airport privatizations, 6 major Indian airports by 2020, serving 25% of India's air traffic, renewable energy projects, coal mine auctions. To be absolutely clear, no evidence has ever been presented of illegal coordination between Adani and the Modi government. What's documented is this. Adani companies won government contracts. That's business. Whether it was fair competition or favoritism, courts have never ruled. We can't say. But the perception was there, and in markets, perception is reality. By 2023, Adani Group isn't just big, it's colossal. 7 publicly traded companies. Combined market capitalization, $220 billion. India's largest private port operator, 30% of the country's cargo, largest private power producer, largest city gas distributor, coal mines, cement, data centers, media. Gautam Adani's personal net worth peaks at $137 billion in March 2022, third richest person on earth. But beneath the empire, there's something else. A corporate structure so complex it requires flowcharts to understand. Cross-holdings, circular ownership. The Adani family controlled roughly 70% across group companies and 38 offshore entities based in Mauritius, the British Virgin Islands, Cyprus, tax havens. These entities supposedly had no connection to the Adani family. They were independent investors. Supposedly. January 2023. Adani Enterprises announces a $2.5 billion share sale. Oversubscribed. Investors fighting to get in. On January 23rd, 2023, Gautam Adani was untouchable. He had 24 hours left. Here's the thing about empires built on leverage and complexity. The warning signs are always there. You just have to look. People were looking. They just weren't loud enough, or the market didn't care. 2020. India's National Securities Depository Limited, NSDL, freezes the accounts of 3 foreign funds holding Adani shares. These funds held $6 billion in Adani stocks. $6 billion. The reason given: insufficient information about fund ownership. The freeze lasted weeks, then quietly lifted. No explanation, no investigation, no consequences. A warning shot. Everyone ignored it. 2021. Jim Chanos, legendary short seller, the man who predicted Enron, publicly questions Adani valuations, points to the debt levels, the related party transactions, the corporate opacity. The market's response? Buy more. By 2022, the valuations had detached from reality. Adani Green Energy trading at 30 times sales. Peers in the renewable energy sector, 5 to 8 times sales. Adani Total Gas with a price-to-earnings ratio over 100. Credit Sites, a bond research firm, warns in 2022. Adani Group's debt levels represent deep trouble. Group debt across all companies, roughly $30 billion. Some projects carrying debt-to-equity ratios exceeding 6 to 1. The stocks kept rising. Related party transactions, deals between Adani Group companies, showed up in annual reports. Billions in intercompany loans, asset transfers. Standard practice in conglomerates, sure, but also the exact mechanism you'd use to inflate revenues, hide debt, create the illusion of profitability. Nobody pushed for answers. August 2021. An analyst in Singapore is reviewing Adani Green Energy's annual report at her desk. She notices something odd buried on page 247. A footnote. A $400 million loan from one Adani subsidiary to another Adani company. She flags it to her compliance team. Related party transactions are normal, they tell her. It's disclosed. Move on. She drops it. That footnote would appear 18 months later in Hindenburg's report. Evidence point number 42. Picture the scene. Mumbai, January 2023. Billboards across the city show Gautam Adani's face. India's pride, they say, building the nation. His companies sponsor cricket tournaments, fund temples, run charity hospitals. The airports bear his name. The power plants light up villages. Who would dare question this man? Who would dare say the emperor has no clothes? Hindenburg would. January 24th, 2023. 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. New York. Nathan Anderson publishes the report. The title alone is a grenade. Adani Group. How the world's third richest man is pulling the largest con in corporate history. 106 pages. 88 specific questions posed directly to Adani Group. This isn't an opinion piece. This is a prosecution memo. The allegations, and these are Hindenburg's claims, not established facts, are devastating. First, stock manipulation through shell companies. Hindenburg identifies 38 offshore entities based in Mauritius. They claim these companies are secretly controlled by Gautam Adani, Gautam's older brother. The alleged purpose? Pump up Adani stock prices by creating artificial demand. Make it look like independent investors are buying when it's really the family buying from itself. Here's the smoking gun detail, page 67 of the report. An entity called Emerging Market Investment DMCC, supposedly an independent investor, holds significant stakes in multiple Adani companies. Hindenburg traces the formation documents, the IP addresses used to register the company, the signing authorities, the lawyers who filed the paperwork, same addresses as Adani family offices, same law firms, same phone numbers, in some cases, the exact same people. Not coincidence, not even competent hiding. The report alleges this pattern across dozens of entities, offshore companies with names like Albula Investment Fund and Cresta Fund and APMS Investment Fund, all supposedly independent, all allegedly linked back to the Adani family through a web of shared directors, addresses, and financial relationships. Second allegation, accounting fraud. Hindenburg claims Adani companies inflated revenues through circular transactions. Adani Power sells electricity to Adani-owned distribution companies at inflated prices. Revenue goes up. But it's not real revenue. It's just money moving in a circle. Adani Green Energy shows massive growth. But Hindenburg alleges it's mostly from selling power to other Adani entities. When you consolidate the group's finances, the growth evaporates. It's accounting illusion. Third, undisclosed related party transactions. The report claims billions in loans between Adani companies that weren't properly disclosed to investors. Money flowing from publicly traded companies to private Adani family entities, publicly traded companies taking the risk, private entities taking the profit. Fourth, money laundering allegations. Hindenburg traces over $2 billion moving through those Mauritius shell entities. They connect dots to Vinod Adani's passport records, director appointments that show up in corporate registries across 3 continents, whistleblower testimony from former Adani senior executives, anonymous but detailed. The report alleges the money went offshore, got cleaned through complex transactions, and came back to India to buy Adani stocks, artificially inflating prices, making the Adani family wealthier on paper while taking money from genuine outside investors. Fifth, regulatory capture. Hindenburg doesn't just accuse Adani. They accuse India's securities regulator, SEBI, of failing oversight. They accuse credit rating agencies of giving favorable ratings despite obvious red flags. They point to audit firms with conflicts of interest, making more money from consulting fees to Adani than from audit fees. The evidence Hindenburg presents: shipping records showing coal inventory discrepancies, satellite imagery of Adani's coal stockpiles, comparing what Adani reported versus what's actually there, corporate registration documents from Mauritius, Cyprus, the UAE, passport scans, email correspondence, bank transfer records. This isn't a hit piece. This is forensic accounting presented as a public document. Hindenburg's conclusion, in their own words, "We believe the Adani Group has engaged in a brazen stock manipulation and accounting fraud scheme over the course of decades. They predict the house of cards will collapse. And they disclose. Hindenburg holds short positions in Adani companies. They profit if the stocks fall. They're not hiding that. They're betting their reputation and their money that they're right." The report publishes at 7 a.m. New York time, midnight in Mumbai. Adani's crisis team has 9 hours before the Indian stock market opens. 9 hours to save $200 billion. The report spreads like wildfire. WhatsApp groups across India, Bloomberg terminals in London and New York, Twitter, financial news websites. Within hours, everyone in global finance has read at least the executive summary. By 11 p.m. Mumbai time, 16 hours after publication, Adani Group issues a response. 413 pages, point-by-point rebuttal. Rushed, defensive, aggressive. They call the report a malicious combination of selective misinformation and stale, baseless, and discredited allegations. They deny everything. Stock manipulation? No. Accounting fraud? Audited by international firms, shell companies? Fully disclosed to regulators, compliant with Indian law. But 413 pages is too long. Markets don't read footnotes, they read headlines. And the headline is $150 billion fraud. January 25th. Markets are closed. Republic Day holiday in India. The calm before $20 billion evaporates. International investors aren't waiting. Adani's dollar-denominated bonds start selling off. Prices drop 5, 10, 15%. Some bonds issued just months earlier now trading at a discount. The message is clear. Get out. January 26th, 2023, 9:15 a.m. Mumbai Stock Exchange opens. 90 seconds. That's how long it takes. Adani Enterprises down 20%. Circuit breaker triggered. Trading halted. Circuit breakers exist to prevent panic. 10% drop in either direction. Trading stops for 15 minutes. Cool off period. Let rationality return. It doesn't return. Adani Green Energy, down 18%, halted. Adani Ports, down 15%, halted. Adani Total Gas, down 23%, halted. Across all 7 Adani publicly traded companies, $20 billion evaporates in 90 seconds. Rajesh Kumar sits in his apartment in Mumbai watching his phone. Rajesh is real, documented in Indian Express coverage during the crisis. He's a taxi driver, 53 years old, invested his daughter's college fund in Adani Green Energy, 12 lakh rupees, about $15,000. It's every spare rupee he's saved in 20 years. By 10 a.m., it's worth 60% of what it was yesterday. I trusted India's richest man, he tells a reporter later. I trusted the Prime Minister's friend. How could this happen? How indeed. The first week, January 24th to 31st, is carnage. Combined losses across the 7 Adani stocks, $70 billion, gone. January 31st, the $2.5 billion share sale Adani Enterprises announced weeks earlier, canceled. Hours before it was scheduled to close. The company had subscribers, people ready to invest, but confidence is gone. The CFO issues a statement. In the interest of protecting investors, we're withdrawing the offering. Translation, nobody wants this anymore. Credit rating agencies scramble. Moody's, S&P, Fitch all place Adani debt on watch negative, reviewing for potential downgrades. This matters because downgrades trigger covenants in loan agreements. Banks can call in debt. Bondholders can demand early repayment. LIC, Life Insurance Corporation of India, the government-owned giant that manages pensions for millions, holds Adani stocks worth about $5 billion. On paper, they've lost $3 billion in a week. That's retirement money. Pensions for teachers, civil servants, railway workers, just gone. February hits. The cascade continues. February 1st. Moody's issues a report. Negative outlook on Adani companies due to governance concerns. February 3rd. Credit sites. The same firm that warned about Adani's debt in 2022 publishes a new report. Adani Group in debt trap. Refinancing will be severely challenged. February 7th. Adani's dollar bonds trading at 70 cents on the dollar. If you loaned Adani $100 in 2022, your bond is now worth $70. 30% loss. In weeks, February 14th, Valentine's Day, Gautam Adani's net worth, $68 billion. He's lost $69 billion in 3 weeks, more than Elon Musk lost in all of 2022, more than most countries' GDP. Behind the scenes, there's another crisis, one most people don't see. The Adani family had pledged millions of shares as collateral for personal loans. When stock prices crash, lenders get nervous. They issue margin calls. Put up more collateral, or we sell your shares. If they sell, prices drop further. Death spiral. Adani Group has 48 hours to find billions in additional collateral, or risk losing control of their own companies. Emergency measures begin, asset sales discussed, loan prepayments, frantic calls to domestic banks. A trader at Deutsche Bank, speaking anonymously to the Financial Times, describes the chaos. Tuesday morning, everyone's trying to exit Adani positions at once. Bonds, stocks, derivatives. There's no bid. You want to sell 100 million in bonds? Good luck finding 20 million of buyers. The market's just gone. And through it all, India's government is silent. 10 days. No comment from the Prime Minister's office, no statement from the Finance Ministry. Nothing. Opposition parties demand investigations, parliamentary debates. But for Modi, silence. The message, or the absence of one, is clear. You're on your own. By March, the bottom is in. Adani Enterprises, down 55% from its pre-report peak. Adani Ports, down 35%. Adani Green Energy, down 65%. Adani Total Gas, down 60%. Total market capitalization destroyed. $153 billion. The empire didn't collapse, but it came close. Closer than anyone thought possible. And the question everyone's asking, was Hindenburg right? Adani Group doesn't surrender, they fight. The 413-page rebuttal, published January 29th, is just the opening salvo. It denies every allegation, point by point. Shell companies? Fully disclosed to regulators, in compliance with Indian law. These entities have been part of our corporate structure for years. Related party transactions? Properly reported in our annual filings. Audited by EY and Deloitte. No irregularities found. Accounting fraud? Baseless. Our financial statements are prepared in accordance with Indian accounting standards and audited by internationally recognized firms. The tone is defiant, the language aggressive. They call Hindenburg's report a calculated attack timed to damage India's reputation and harm Adani Group's $2.5 billion fundraise. And then they frame it as patriotism. This is an attack on India itself. It's brilliant positioning. Criticize Adani, and you're criticizing India's success story. You're anti-national. You're siding with Western short sellers over Indian enterprise. Some Indian politicians embrace this narrative. Hindenburg becomes economic terrorism. The report becomes a conspiracy by foreign powers to undermine India's rise. January 31st. India's government finally breaks its silence, sort of. The finance ministry issues a carefully worded statement. Regulatory authorities are reviewing the matter. No defense of Adani, but no condemnation either. Non-committal, strategic ambiguity. But state institutions can do what the government can't say publicly. February 6th. Adani Group announces it's prepaying $1.1 billion in debt, ahead of schedule. The message to lenders and bondholders: we have cash. We're liquid. Don't panic. State Bank of India, the largest bank in India, government-controlled, issues a statement. Our exposure to Adani Group is fully secured. We have no concerns about recovery. LIC, despite losing $3 billion on paper, doesn't sell, doubles down. We're long-term investors. Short-term volatility doesn't change our thesis. The government couldn't defend Adani publicly. The optics were impossible. But state-owned institutions could send signals, and they did. Adani announces other measures: asset sales, non-core businesses to reduce leverage. Target: cut debt-to-EBITDA ratio from 2.2 to under 2.0. Details are vague, timeline is vague, but markets want to believe. Adani Enterprises announces a share buyback, the ultimate vote of confidence. We believe our stock is undervalued. We're buying it back. Late February, the freefall stops. Stocks stabilize, still down 30 to 50%, but not crashing anymore. The narrative begins to shift. Maybe Hindenburg exaggerated. Maybe the allegations were cherry-picked. Maybe Adani is guilty of aggressive accounting, but not fraud. Maybe this is normal emerging market corporate governance and we're all just clutching pearls. The truth is, nobody knows. Because the one entity that could definitively answer, India's securities regulator, hasn't said anything. Where is SEBI? Where are the investigations? Where are the findings? That's the next chapter. And it's the most frustrating one. February 2023. SEBI, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, announces it's investigating Hindenburg's allegations. Finally, the referee enters the ring. Or so it seems. SEBI's mandate is clear. Investigate whether Adani Group manipulated stock prices, whether the offshore entities violated disclosure rules, whether related party transactions were properly reported. Simple questions, binary answers. Either the rules were followed or they weren't. Except nothing about Adani is simple. 7 publicly traded companies, dozens of subsidiaries, offshore entities spanning Mauritius, Cyprus, the UAE, the British Virgin Islands, corporate structures built over 3 decades, transactions numbering in the thousands. Tracing money through tax havens is theoretically possible. Legally, Mauritius and Cyprus have information-sharing agreements with India. But in practice, companies can stonewall, claim attorney-client privilege, delay, obscure, and that's assuming the political will exists to push hard. June 2023. 4 months into the investigation, SEBI requests a deadline extension. The matter is complex, they say. We need more time. September 2023. Still no findings. January 2024, 1 year after the Hindenburg report, still no findings. The silence is deafening. India's Supreme Court gets involved in August 2023. Opposition parties petition the court, demanding a special investigation. The court directs SEBI to report on progress. SEBI's response: we're working on it. The investigation is ongoing. We've made progress. What progress? Classified. When will it conclude? Unknown. The Supreme Court remarkably says it's satisfied with SEBI's efforts and closes the matter. No findings, no transparency. Just trust us. Meanwhile, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission opens its own probe. Reports emerge in March 2023, Reuters, Bloomberg, that the SEC is investigating Adani's dollar bond offerings to American investors. The focus. Were disclosures made to U.S. investors accurate? If Adani misrepresented finances to American bondholders, that's SEC jurisdiction. If bribery was involved in securing contracts, that's the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. The SEC can prosecute that. But there's a problem. Adani isn't listed on U.S. exchanges. The bonds were issued under Regulation S, offshore, exempt from SEC registration requirements. The SEC can ask questions, compelling answers across international borders. Much harder. France's Financial Markets Authority gets involved too. Total Energies, the French energy giant, invested roughly $3 billion in Adani Green Energy. France's regulator reviews whether TotalEnergies conducted adequate due diligence, multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency, multi-year. And while regulators move at the speed of bureaucracy, markets have already moved on. As of early 2024, here's what we know. No regulatory body has published findings of fraud. No criminal charges have been filed anywhere. No smoking gun has been proven in court. But also, no regulatory body has exonerated Adani. No investigation has closed. No one has said, "We looked and Hindenburg was wrong." Just silence, ongoing investigations, bureaucratic language about complexity and time. The gap between allegation and proof, between suspicion and conviction, that gap is where truth goes to die. And in that gap, $153 billion disappeared 1 year later. January 2024. Let's tally the damage. The stocks have partially recovered. Adani Enterprises, down 28% from its pre-report peak. Recovered from minus 55%. Adani Ports, down 18%. Adani Green Energy, still down 45%. Survival, not triumph. The Adani empire still operates. Ports still move cargo. Power plants still generate electricity. Airports still process passengers. The infrastructure didn't disappear. The business didn't collapse. But the aura of invincibility? Gone. The valuation premium? Gone. Access to cheap international capital? Severely damaged. Gautam Adani's net worth in January 2024, $95 billion. He's recovered $27 billion from the low point. He's the 14th richest person globally now, down from third. Still a billionaire, still powerful, but mortal now. Fallible. Let's talk winners. Hindenburg Research. They made money. By their own disclosure, approximately $4 million profit from their short positions. Not as much as you'd think, given the scale of the collapse. They were limited by position size, liquidity constraints. Can't short too much, or you can't exit when you need to. But $4 million for 3 months of work? Not bad. More importantly, reputational gain. Hindenburg is now the gold standard for forensic short selling. Every hedge fund, every investigative journalist, every regulatory agency now looks at their reports seriously. That's worth more than $4 million. Other short sellers, the anonymous ones who piggybacked on Hindenburg's report, made more. Estimates range from 200 to 500 million in total short selling profits across multiple hedge funds. Someone always profits from catastrophe. The regulatory debate wins too. Adani forced a conversation on corporate governance in India that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Offshore entity transparency is now a political issue. Credit rating agency independence is questioned. Audit quality is scrutinized. No reform yet, but awareness. It's something. Now the losers, retail investors. This is the big one. Millions of small Indian investors held Adani stocks. Exact numbers are unknown, but conservative estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of individuals, maybe more. Rajesh Kumar, the taxi driver we talked about earlier, still down 40%. His daughter's college fund still decimated. Multiply that by thousands. LIC, Life Insurance Corporation, manages pensions for tens of millions of Indians. Their Adani exposure at the peak, roughly $5 billion. Paper losses, over $3 billion. That's retirement money for teachers, civil servants, railway workers, nurses, people who trusted a government institution to protect their futures. The EPFO, Employees Provident Fund Organization, which manages retirement savings for 60 million Indian workers, had exposure estimated at 12,000 crore rupees, about $1.5 billion. Opposition parties claimed this. The government never confirmed, never denied. Your retirement, less 30%, because regulators didn't ask questions. International investors got hurt too. TotalEnergies, $3 billion investment in Adani Green Energy, down significantly. Reputation damaged for partnering with a company now synonymous with scandal. GQG Partners, a U.S.-based investment fund, bought $1.9 billion of Adani shares in March 2023, right after the crash, betting on recovery. They called it buying the dip, and some call it catching a falling knife. As of January 2024, they're underwater, not recovered yet. In India itself, India's capital market reputation took a hit. Foreign direct investment growth slowed in 2023. Correlation, not proven causation. But investors now price in governance risk when evaluating Indian companies. The emerging market premium, the extra return investors demand to compensate for higher risk, widened for Indian stocks. Adani became shorthand. Can you really trust Indian corporate governance? That perception damages everyone. Every Indian company now pays a slightly higher cost of capital. Every entrepreneur finds it slightly harder to raise money internationally. One scandal. Ripple effects across an economy. So who really won? Hindenburg made $4 million. Adani lost $42 billion from his peak. Retail investors lost fortunes. The system didn't change. Here's what nobody asks. Was justice served? Or did we just watch wealth transfer from ordinary Indians to sophisticated short sellers? Maybe both. Every financial catastrophe teaches lessons. Whether anyone learns them is another question. For investors, political connections don't equal safety. Adani's closeness to Modi was marketed as a moat, an unfair advantage, protection. It became a red flag. History is full of examples. Enron in the United States, close ties to the Bush administration, collapsed anyway. China's Evergrande. Implicit government backing. Defaulted on $300 billion in debt anyway. Power protects until it doesn't. Then it makes the fall harder. Complexity is a warning sign. If you need a flowchart to understand a company's structure, that's not sophistication. That's camouflage. 38 shell companies in tax havens. Is it legitimate tax planning or money laundering? The answer is, you'll never know until it's too late. And by then, your money's gone. Valuation matters. It always matters. Adani Green Energy trading at 30 times sales while peers traded at 5 times. The market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, but not forever. Gravity always wins. For regulators, speed beats thoroughness when market confidence is at stake. SEBI's investigation, 1 year and counting, no conclusions. The market collapse, 3 weeks. By the time you find definitive proof, the damage is done. Investors have lost fortunes. Trust is shattered. Maybe perfect justice isn't possible. Maybe fast justice is better than perfect justice. Offshore opacity is a feature of the global financial system, not a bug. Mauritius, Cyprus, the British Virgin Islands. We've built a world where hiding money is easier than finding it. Every G20 summit, politicians promise transparency. Tax havens will be reined in. Information sharing will increase. And nothing changes, because the countries hosting these entities profit from them. And powerful people in every country use them. Post-Adani, has anything reformed? No. The same structures exist. The same loopholes remain. For India specifically, the national champion concept cuts both ways. Supporting domestic companies, building industrial capacity, creating jobs, all legitimate goals. But when a businessman's success becomes the nation's pride, criticism becomes unpatriotic. China learned this with Evergrande. South Korea learned it with the chaebols. When companies become too big to fail, they also become too big to regulate. And that's when the risk builds. Who watches the watchmen? SEBI. Credit rating agencies, auditors, all of them failed or ignored red flags for years. Regulatory capture doesn't always mean corruption. Sometimes it just means comfort. The regulator knows the company well. They've worked together for years. Trust builds, skepticism fades, and by the time problems surface, everyone's too invested to act. The broader pattern, Enron, Wirecard, Luckin Coffee, now Adani, different countries, different industries. But common threads, opacity defended as business complexity, auditors who didn't audit, regulators who arrived late. Media too invested in the success story to question it, and technology plays both sides. Hindenburg used shipping databases, satellite imagery, digital forensics to trace Adani's offshore network. 20 years ago, impossible. But the fraud itself required modern technology. Instant global money transfers, offshore banking networks, corporate registries that don't talk to each other. Technology enables the crime and the detective. What matters is, who's faster? The uncomfortable truth we have to face: should we rely on profit-motivated short sellers to police markets? The answer should be no. That's what regulators are for. But do we rely on short sellers? Yes, absolutely. Does that mean the system is broken? Without question. Hindenburg did SEBI's job better than SEBI. A 12-person firm in New York uncovered what India's securities regulator either couldn't find or chose not to see. But Hindenburg's incentive is profit, not justice. They make money when companies collapse, when investors lose fortunes, when economies get shocked. Is that the system we want? No. Is that the system we have? Yes. There's a sliver of hope. Maybe. Post-Adani, some Indian companies are improving disclosure. International investors are demanding better governance before committing capital. The questions are being asked, not reform, just awareness. It's a start. But the cynicism is stronger. 6 months from now, there'll be another Adani. Different country, different industry, same playbook, complex structure, offshore entities, related party transactions, auditors who don't ask hard questions, regulators who arrive late. And another Hindenburg will find it, because that's the game. That's how this works. The system doesn't change until catastrophe forces it to. And even then, barely. January 2024, 1 year after the report that shook India, Gautam Adani still runs the Adani Group, still chairman, still controls the empire. His ports still move cargo, 30% of India's trade. His power plants still generate electricity. His airports still process millions of passengers. He gave one interview after the crisis, to the Financial Times. He called the Hindenburg report a test. He said he passed. Net worth today, $95 billion. He's recovered $27 billion from the bottom, 14th richest person on earth. Down from third, sure, but still in the top 20. Still a billionaire dozens of times over. The empire didn't fall. Nathan Anderson, Hindenburg's founder, has already moved on. Published 3 more reports since Adani, Block Inc., Cholas, the payments company, ICICI Bank, one of India's largest private banks, others. He's not a crusader. He's a businessman who found a profitable way to expose what he believes is fraud. But does the motive matter if the result is truth? Philosophy question. No easy answer. The investigations continue. SEBI, still investigating, still no timeline for conclusions. The SEC probe. Status unknown. They don't comment on active investigations. India's parliament, opposition parties still demanding answers, still being ignored. A year later, we're no closer to guilty or innocent. The money tells its own story. Hindenburg's profit from shorting Adani, $4 million. They donated it to charity, per their public statement. Make of that what you will. Retail investors' losses, never recovered. Rajesh Kumar, still down 40%. His daughter's college fund still decimated. Multiply that by thousands of families. The people who caused the crisis, if there was a crisis, are still billionaires. The people who exposed it made millions. The people who lost the most never had a choice in any of it. Here's the irony that keeps me up at night. A 106-page PDF from a New York office did what India's Securities and Exchange Board couldn't or wouldn't. Hindenburg had no subpoena power, no regulatory authority, no jurisdiction over Indian companies, just data, determination, and a short position. They couldn't force Adani to open books, couldn't compel testimony, couldn't impose fines. All they could do was publish evidence and let the market decide. And the market decided in 72 hours. $150 billion gone. Meanwhile, SEBI, with subpoena power, with regulatory authority, with jurisdiction, has produced nothing definitive in 12 months. What does that tell you about the system? Right now, somewhere in the world, the pattern is repeating. A company is inflating revenues through circular transactions, hiding debt in offshore entities, using shell companies to manipulate stock prices. Auditors are signing financials without asking hard questions. Credit raters are issuing investment-grade ratings based on incomplete information. Regulators are understaffed, overwhelmed, or looking the other way. And somewhere, a forensic analyst is pulling shipping records at 2 a.m, tracing corporate registries across jurisdictions, finding the thread that unravels everything. The game continues. Because this is the game. This is how modern capitalism works. Complexity as camouflage, offshore structures as shields, and whether it's legal or illegal decided only after billions are lost. You can believe Gautam Adani is a visionary builder, a man who electrified villages, built ports that transformed trade, created jobs for hundreds of thousands. A man whose empire was attacked by opportunistic short sellers looking for profit. Or you can believe Hindenburg exposed the largest corporate fraud in Indian history, that regulators failed, that political connections protected wrongdoing, that the system is rigged. Or, most uncomfortably, you can believe both things are partially true, that Adani built real businesses and manipulated markets, that Hindenburg told important truths and profited from destruction, that the system is too broken to distinguish between the two. That's where we are, in the gap between allegation and proof, between conviction and exoneration, in the space where $150 billion disappeared and nobody can definitively say why. In Mumbai, the Adani Group headquarters still stands, 22 stories of glass and steel overlooking the Arabian Sea, lights on every night, business as usual. In New York, Nathan Anderson is already writing the next report, investigating the next target, loading the next shot. And in between, in pension funds and brokerage accounts and the savings of millions who trusted the system, the wreckage remains. The empire didn't fall. It just learned to fall more quietly. This was the Hindenburg effect.